Welcome back to the Lou Perez podcast. My name is Lou Perez, and I'm happy to report that right now you can order my book. That's right, I wrote a book. It's called That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy. Follow the link in the description or head over to Amazon and search for Lou Perez, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. If you want other options on how you can buy my book, please sign up for my newsletter at thelouperez.com. You could also join my community at thelouperez.locals.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. And if you could leave a 5-star review, that would be amazing. Whether you're a long-time listener or a first-time, 5-star reviews are lovely. If you're looking for other ways you can support me, you can do so by supporting my sponsors. If you're into CBD products, please check out palomaverdecbd.com. Use promo code Lou to get 25% off purchases over $75. And if you like cold brew, check out Black Organic Cold Brew at www.blvckbrew.com and use promo code Lou for free shipping. All right, let's go. I'm very happy to be joined by the voice of artist George Alexopoulos. You might know him as G'85 on Instagram. George, thank you very much for joining me. For those people who are just listening or those who are looking at the video, we've had some technical difficulties, but George has given me the permission to share some of his comic strips, if not some, then all of them. So for any of you who are lucky enough to be watching this on YouTube or Rumble or wherever, you're going to be able to check out George's art. And for those of you who are just listening, head over to Instagram where you can listen to this while going through G'85's account. So George, thank you so much for joining me, man.
It's my pleasure, Lou. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. So right off the bat, I'm from Queens, New York originally. Now I live in Jersey.
Cool. I had family in Astoria.
I was gonna say because George Alexopoulos, it's a very Greek name, and it seems like I don't meet that many Greeks anymore. Like I feel like the Greek community is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of small, and just it's either they're in Queens or I never meet any Greeks. So.
It's funny too. Growing up, I didn't know a lot of Greeks either, and I never really understood why until years later. And I learned more about my family's like migration history and everything. And what happened, the short version is they were Protestant Greeks. And
Protestant Greeks.
Yes. So what we would call in America just a basic Protestant evangelical background sort of thing. But in Greece, around the time when they migrated in the 60s, let's say, they were considered by the Orthodox Greeks as like borderline cultists, Like Greeks now are super Orthodox.
Right.
But when we came here, I don't know if it was my family just didn't want to mingle with Greek Orthodox people. So I didn't know many Greeks at all. So I grew up just as a basic American kid. And then they spoke Greek at home. But then occasionally, like we mentioned, like I would go to Astoria and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I had some family there, and then they migrated out of New York City around 90s, I want to say.
Did you do any? Did you go to Greek school? I guess.
No, because that would have been tied to Greek Orthodox culture, I guess. And because I never got the full story, but I get the feeling that they were treated badly, Protestants over there. So they kind of just don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
Or maybe they treated each other badly would be more fair to say. Because, like in Ireland, they were like fighting to the death.
Yeah. But I've never heard of Greeks being anything other than Greek Orthodox. That's so wild.
Yeah, it was surprising to me. And I never knew many Greeks growing up, like I mentioned. And I never knew why, but that must be the reason why. Because now I can go to any Greek Orthodox church and just get to know people and chat it up, whatever. I'm agnostic, so it doesn't matter to me who I talk to. It's fun to talk to people in like a language I kind of am losing, so I want to refresh myself.
Yeah, my cousin got married a few months ago, and his wife is Greek, so they had a Greek wedding, and it was the first. I think it was the first time I'd ever been inside a Greek church, and I don't know if all the Greek Orthodox churches are the same, but there was a lot of art on the walls, like
Yeah.
even more than I'm used to seeing at. I grew up Roman Catholic, so even more than I was used to seeing on that front. As an artist, are you trained in the arts, or is this something that you picked up on your own?
I don't know if I was specifically encouraged, like you mentioned, churches being well decorated and everything. I've always been attracted to beautiful things like architecture and painting and stuff, but I think most people are. I mean, cartoons,
Right.
video games, anything related to art just made me happy, and I wanted to draw because it was fun. So growing up, I guess in elementary school and all that stuff, I was just an average kid who liked drawing, and I just never stopped doing it. And by the end of high school, I would say I started taking it seriously because you have to choose your vocation, so they say. And I said, well, there's one thing I like doing more than anything, drawing and stuff. And I don't like anything else. And I'm not good at anything else. So that's what I pursued. I don't know if I had any special encouragement. Actually, no, I was discouraged by my family to draw because none of them could see a career path in it, which is unfortunate because I had friends who went on to like the games industry. And one of my old friends from high school is like a multi-millionaire now working for like, I guess I won't say out of respect, but like big companies. And he knew to go to a school in like Washington for game development. And I should have done that, but my path was different. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I have an old friend who we did comedy together in college. He was in a master's program, so I was a part of his sketch comedy and improv troupe. And he was getting his master's in, I think, dramatic writing. And him and a few other people who were in his program, they made the leap to game development. And I guess that was, was probably, we're getting close to like 20 years ago. So I think maybe that was when like sort of games started really taking on a lot more narrative. And
there wasn't a clear career path to it either.
Right.
I mean, there are some schools now, more schools now than 20 years ago. But you would be in programming or something and then fall into game development. There weren't a lot, especially here in the States. A lot of games were being made in Japan, right? But that's the unfortunate thing. I graduated high school in 2003. So all I had was my guidance counselor to ask, hey, can I go to a game school? Do those exist? And he's like, yeah, there's one, but you would have to borrow a ton of money, and my family didn't have any. So it's like, oh, here's this other school in New York. How about you commute and go do art instead? I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I dropped out.
Which school?
School of Visual Arts.
SVA? Okay.
Yes. I went for a cartooning major, whatever that is. And they did the foundation year and stuff. And I was pissed off that all these animation kids immediately have their own curriculum. Like from year 1 to year 4, there's no foundation stuff. You're just thrown into animation. Like, why can't I do that? Why do I have to take math and science? I was pissed off.
Oh, really? Wow.
So I ended up dropping out for multiple reasons, but that was one of them.
Yeah. Did when I think about cartoonists or and what do you like to be called? Because I don't want to throw monikers out there, and you're like, oh, this fucking guy is calling me this.
No. I don't want to come off as pretentious or anything like that. I call myself whatever. I tend to not say I'm an artist because I'm not. I'm not like that word has so much dignity, and most of what I do is just shit posting. So
I think there's a problem with the dignity in the arts. I think that over the years there's been such a separation between quote unquote artists and the people. And I think a lot of arts are actually dying because of that. Like I was just going to say, like my wife is she went to school for dance, and she's was a dancer when she graduated. She was in professional dance companies. She is choreographed and all that, and she's taken me to some just amazing performances. And then you look around, and it's like all these empty seats. And I think a big reason why is because a lot of people either view the arts like dance is like, ooh, that's a little highbrow, or the people involved in it, they see themselves as sort of like, better than everyone else, rather than like, no, we need to get people involved. We need to, I don't even want to say lower ourselves or lower our standards, but without people, without patrons, the arts are gonna die.
Yeah, because back in the old days, an artist, say a painter or something, or even dancers and stuff, musicians, your patrons would be people like kings and like really, really rich people, and by osmosis, the arts would then be what's the word I'm looking for? Disseminated against, I guess maybe you're not like the highest tier musician, but you might be able to play in public theaters because people were interested in what the aristocrats were doing. And it's a shame with what you described with dance and stuff, but it does make perfect sense to me. On one hand, arts, those of us who devote our lives to art, it's almost like our religion. So of course we see it as a very high thing, but also we have to convince, I can't think of a non-patronizing word, the common person. Right. But I don't mean commoner as like a negative, but just people who aren't so interested in art, but might be interested in, say my strips are, they're designed to be munched on within 5 seconds. And I have to spend hours drawing it so that it, like even color selection, everything, every word I choose, and I'm sure you can agree with comedy, it's almost about what you don't say as much as what you do say, and trimming every little word. And it's designed to make it as snackable as possible so that I'm scrolling on Twitter, whatever, and I'm on Twitter because that's where the people are. They're not going to come to me.
Right. So
we as performers, as artists, have to go to where the people are, and then hopefully present some of our, hey, here's a whole menu of things you can get from me. Maybe some of our things are more popular than others, but hey, if you like my shit posts, maybe you might consider buying one of my serious books that I actually try on. So it's a damn shame, because what you describe is like, I'm sure for your wife, it's been her lifelong passion, decades of practice and discipline. And just to get people interested in seeing it is like, it's such a struggle to eat. It's because that's marketing and business. That's not the discipline.
Yeah. And also when it comes to dancers, I mean, dancers are athletes, so, and so all athletes have a shelf life as well. So,
right.
You have
poor body.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so it's one of those arts where it really, there is an end point, that you're constantly, sort of dancing towards. Whereas, fortunately for, the visual arts, and then also with writing, you could keep doing it until, someone fucks up your hands or something goes wrong with your brain, I guess, When I think about, cartoons, I guess one of the big artists that comes to mind is Crumb. Oh, you're a fan of Crumb? Or?
I'm familiar. I have strong feelings about him, put it this way.
Okay.
I've seen his stuff. What's the word I would use? I look at it with a mixture of horror and respect. How's that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely...
I'm sorry. His underground comics movement is similar to what I'm doing and other people like me are doing now, where we can't get published traditionally, so we have to publish our own books. And our online audience is similar to the underground comics of, say, the 70s.
Got it. Yeah, a lot of Crumb stuff is, pretty grotesque, I guess, if you're...
and did you see that documentary?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I saw that years ago with about him and also
his family,
super weird brothers.
So disturbing.
For those of you who haven't seen, I think it's called Crumb. And
Terry Zwigoff directed it, I think.
Oh, and is Terry like a cartoonist too, or
no? He made him. Did he make Ghost World? It's been so many years, but he's in there with like artsy fartsy. Did he work on American Splendor? No. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, but. It's
no, all good.
It is a documentary. Yes.
The one thing that always stands out to me whenever I think about that documentary is the one scene where they're interviewing one of his brothers, and the brother is sitting on the floor, and he's slowly eating or
Yes.
swallowing
I think
like
about that.
shoelaces, like a shoelace or a
Or
string.
like a rag tied into knots or something.
Something, yeah, it's something, yeah, something you normally wouldn't be swallowing or be trying to swallow. And I guess it was some way of him to kind of,
It's like 100 feet long too.
yeah, it's kind of like I guess the equivalent of like a plumber's snake, to like snake out the pipes. And I guess the idea is he's going to swallow this thing, and then eventually it's going to work its way through his small intestines and large intestine, come out of his ass, and he's going to pull it out.
Yeah.
Is that what?
I think, I mean, it's been years, and it's one of those films that I can't watch again because it was so horrifying. That was one of the reasons, but I think there was some kind of monkish meditation thing tied to why he did that. But he was into like new age stuff, and that he wanted to cleanse himself.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the most fascinating things about the film, and one of the most horrifying, is that all the brothers had some kind of abuse problem when they were kids. And we can get into that if you want. But they all were working it out in their own way. And one of the brothers turned to like new age medicine and stuff. The other brother just fell into hyper depression and shot himself. Right. And possibly abused kids or something. And then our Crumb became an artist. And if you look at his art, you can see into his subconscious and the kind of ways he tried to cope with horrifying things that must have happened to all of them. And like, for instance, you can tell with our Crumb, he's got like serious women issues. My guess would be psychologically, like their mom did something to them.
Yeah, he has a thing for like sort of Amazonian big women with thick thighs and asses and all that, and
like women that he can latch onto like a boy.
Yeah, and they can kind of carry him around. I think sometimes literally, yeah.
So art is a healthy way to express that, I suppose. And I don't judge him for that stuff, but I look at a lot of his work and I'm like, wow, that him and his brothers, like when you see the documentary, it's like these guys were seriously worked on. Something happened.
Yeah.
But I think art is an amazing way to explore that stuff in a safe way. And you can learn about humanity through, I don't know, being an artist. It's like you can work out the images coming out of your head. And a lot of the times it's like, wow, I didn't even know that was there.
Right.
So he's an important artist. I don't like the things he makes a lot of the time, but that's art too. And I respect that.
Yeah. Well, the way that you described, he and his brothers, I guess, finding a way to deal with their own trauma. I got turned on to your stuff by a friend of mine who was just basically, he texted me. He's like, you gotta check this guy's stuff out. And I went and I checked and I checked it out, and it was sort of the cool thing about Instagram. It's an endless scroll, but also you have so much work that it's just kind of like endless. Watching your stuff, being able to check your stuff out. And it seems like a lot of the political cartooning that you're doing, the political strips, it's sort of dealing with political strife and trauma that we're kind of going through as a country. If I'm getting that wrong, or just let me know.
That's fair. I say it's current events, but I also can't hide my the direction I'm aiming at is from the center right towards the left. So I am biased somewhat, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm a fan of like the super right either.
Right.
But around the time when I was drawing these strips, it's sort of like I'm poking at the people who I think are overstepping their bounds the most. Put it that way.
Yeah. And when did you start? Were you always doing political stuff, or what was there a moment when it started for you?
Well, there was a point where it took off more than my other stuff. So I would describe my stuff more as current events than political. It just happens that political stuff is what I hear about the most in the news these days. So 2-3 years ago, I've always been drawing 4-panel strips just for fun, like Peanuts, Calvin and Hobbes, that sort of thing. And I've also been drawing indie comics, but those never really took off. Maybe I had a couple thousand people if I was lucky at the time. And then I drew a bunch of 4-panel strips, and a lot of people were telling me, hey, draw more of these. This is good. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm trying to learn how to use color in Photoshop and stuff. And I'm like, I'll just keep practicing. I'll keep making my 4-panel strips. And a couple of them got more popular than others. And there was one that really exploded, which was Joe Biden sucking the black out of a woman. And he said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And so, he sucks it out of her like magic or whatever. And she's, falls on the ground and passes out, something like that. And that got shared around like crazy. But I had already had a bad reputation online because of this Reddit bullshit that happened. And they decided I was alt-right at the time.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of people were sharing around that comic. And then other people like Marxy types were saying, hey, don't share this. This guy's a white supremacist or something like that. So at the same time, I was growing. And
he's a Protestant Greek. Don't share this.
I always joke like I am supreme, but that doesn't mean other people are. Right. Whatever. It's stupid. But so my profile was raised more and more because of the 4-panel stuff, and a lot of online drama, people calling you names and stuff like that. And I just decided, look, this is what people are responding to. It's not the only thing I want to do, but I've been struggling my whole career to get noticed. And if this is what people want right now, fine. And maybe in a few years, if people lose interest, I'll do something else. Well,
there's something to also, being comfortable with what the people want and being comfortable delivering on that.
Yeah.
So at no point, at no point do you feel like I'm selling out or I'm giving in. Or it's like, no, you're doing what you want to do and you found an audience. So that, that must make it, a lot more easier to deal with. With the Biden thing, it's so funny how the way that you described that strip. Biden said it. Biden said, and I think I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like, if you don't vote for me, you're not black.
You ain't black.
You ain't black. So it's sort of look, as a comedian, right? If you were to take a comedian, I'm a libertarian comedian, conservative in some respects, and so if you give me this thing that actually happened, and then you take a lefty comedian, a progressive comedian, and all that, and it's like, what are you going to do with that material? It's like you have to engage that material, and I think the way that you engaged with it makes a lot of sense, and it's also pretty hilarious.
A lot of comedy, and I'm sure you're an expert on this. Like, I'm just kind of on the side, but like a lot of comedy comes from the position of the underdog, I think, and the absurd and horror and turning it into. I've always suspected, like in the brain circuits, horror and humor and even sadness, they're all tied together so closely that almost sometimes when people are shocked, they don't know whether to cry or be sad or something. Like another strip that got a lot of traction was the Dancing Nurses one, where a lady is looking through a glass at her father and he's got COVID or something. And she's like, my only regret is that I didn't get to hold your hand one more time. And it's very sad. And then the 4th panel is a surprise where the doctors are dancing behind her. So it takes this horrifying, really sad situation. And people emailed me or contacted me afterwards saying, that happened with me and my grandpa or something. But it was really cathartic for them to read that strip, they said. So there's some service that's being rendered there that I don't fully understand. But when we say like leftist comedians, like if you look at SNL and they're just like poking fun at the most stupid, trite stuff that there's no edge to it at all. There's no risk.
Yeah.
And I don't see that as funny. And most people don't too, because they are, in my opinion, on top already. They're not the underdogs. I think conservatives are the underdogs, and they may not be for much longer, actually.
I think a lot of the underdog stuff, or I guess in comedy, you hear a lot of like punching up or punching down. Yeah. A lot of it is definitely situational, between, who's punching up, who's punching down. So you could, there are people out there who sincerely want you to believe that the president of the United States, that you're punching down at him, You know, it's like, no, he's the most powerful man in the world. What are you talking about?
I think they're subconsciously, they know we are punching down though.
Yeah,
Like, he's just an old man. Don't be mean to him. And I'm like, listen to me. He can kill millions of people in a second.
Sure.
He's asleep at the wheel. And I think about this all the time. If you don't want me to mock the most powerful man in the world, replace him with someone who knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I don't want to even notice the president. Right. Frankly, like I'd rather make fun of just like jerks on the street or myself. Yeah. But for me, it's a source of horror to think like this is the guy you picked of all your choices. Yeah, I don't mean to get into it, but
no, it's cool. I've there have been plenty of times when I'm like, oh, I didn't want the presidency to end like this. You know, this isn't what I had in mind. You know, it gets to a point sometimes where he's so incoherent, and that it is difficult to watch. It's hard for me to watch. And talking about SNL, the comedian who does a new cast member who's doing comedy, who's doing the Biden impression now. He does a fantastic job doing Biden. He also does a wonderful job on doing Trump, at least vocally. You know, he's got his voice down wonderfully. But when it comes to the writing, the one thing that I've noticed anytime they do like the cold opens with Biden is that they never latch on to the obvious, which is, you know, Biden's incoherence, his, you know, tripping up on things. They've decided to go this route where it's like, what if Joe Biden was making pop culture references? So the last cold open I saw, it was all about Spider-Man. And it's like, look, you know, you do the voice is wonderful. You got him down, but that just doesn't make sense together, you know?
Well, I'm sure what's happening in these writers' rooms and what happens in a lot of writers' rooms, especially with the left, is they are tying their hands behind their back. And they're not telling real comedy, because real comedy is just on the edge of like, holy shit, I can't believe they said that. That's what old SNL used to do, where if you look at Norm Macdonald, the things he would say, even in front of like Bill Clinton, when he's doing like a roast or whatever, it's like, of course he got fired, but that's comedy. Is how much can you get away with without getting booted off like Instagram or something?
Yeah.
Real comedy, if they really wanted on SNL to go after Biden, it's like, we know what kind of jokes they should tell, but they don't have the balls because they're going to get punished because and this is the problem with any kind of censorship in comedy or performances or art in general. Art is supposed to be about truth and uncomfortable truth, perhaps. Like we talked about our Crumb back in the 70s, especially, or the 60s, the kinds of things he would draw. What was the name of his cat character? Not Felix.
Fritz.
Fritz.
Yeah.
You know, he would draw like cat characters, like in sexual situations.
Huge cocks right. And balls.
And he would it would be underground printed. And there was a lot of culture of counterculture. And this is you can't show this. It's under the shelf. You know, you have to ask for it. But that's what made it cool back then. Mm-hmm. And a lot of comedy has this kind of this nature of you can't say it in public spaces because it's too edgy. But that's what makes it good. So a lot of mainstream comedy is too safe. It's too polished, and that's the problem with edginess, is you have to risk getting canceled almost.
I think I want to give a shout out to comedian J.L. Cauvin, who he blew up, I guess going back a couple of years now, with his Donald Trump impression. And I think he's the absolute best who does it. Not only is the voice and the inflection just dead on Trump, but the subject matter, like when JL riffs, he's really getting. It's funny because he can't stand Trump, but he's like so connected to him in some way where it feels like he really has like a part of Trump's brain, and he's able to create this stuff. And I mean, when I would see like SNL bringing on Alec Baldwin to do what I think was one of the worst fucking Trump impressions ever. And then, then watching what JL was doing, where JL would do like, an hour-long podcast as Trump, riffing on everything that was happening, and to the point where he has Trump supporters sharing his shit, and then being upset when they find out that it's not actually Trump who is saying this stuff. So he's done just, I think, just like an amazing job, and it's funny because when you have like these people, comedians like JL, who's not on a TV show, he's not on a major show, he's online. It's almost like, hey, SNL, if you're gonna, I know they've been accused of stealing jokes before. It's like, at least steal this dude's whole shtick, because his shit is working, man, and he's doing it, and like he's hit, and he continues to hit Trump from angles that the late night comedy can't hit him from. It's unique and edgy and all that. So I high praise for JL and the others who are able to do stuff like that.
Yeah, that reminds me of in any art, it's possible to become too successful, and then you're not willing to take risks anymore, and you start losing. Can't
wait to get there, man. I would love to get there.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, I guess, because in the writing rooms at SNL, I'm sure people climb tooth and claw and fight to get in there, and it's like now all the things that got you in, you can't do anymore.
Yeah, I feel like where my career is right now, what I'm risking is like, oh, is this one gonna upset my wife? And so far, like everything I've done, it's been really, we haven't had any fights over my material, which is, and that's. We're going on like 8 years of being together, and that's 8 years of, me being on Twitter and Facebook and making videos and doing stand up. So that's a good thing.
I understand that fully. Yes.
Yeah.
Go on. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. No. So speaking of censorship, if people go to G Prime 85 on IG and scroll back, there was a moment when like at least one of your strips was taken down, right?
Two so far.
Which ones were they, and are they available elsewhere?
They must be available on, Twitter's a swamp. I don't know how you could find those. I have print versions of my comics, so people could order the books. Archive wise, I guess I should be on other websites, but I focus on IG and Twitter right now. The two strips that were canceled or pulled down was one I drew. All right, it's kind of inside baseball. There was,
and I have to say my apologies too, because this is sort of like, I'm asking a visual artist to describe what he drew. That's even worse than people asking a comedian to tell a joke. So my apologies right off the bat.
I can look for it somewhere in my folders and then screen share. Give me 2 seconds.
Sure.
You know what though? I don't even know if you can show it.
Oh, it might be. You might get me taken down.
Elmo. Yeah, it was an Elmo.
It was an Elmo. Ooh, I think I remember coming across that.
Do I want to risk doing this? No, I don't want to risk your thing, but I'll describe it. So the first panel. All right. The reason I drew this was because on Sesame Street, a dad and his son, black dad and his son, were sitting on a bench, and they said, Elmo said to the boy, "Hey, why is your skin black?" And then the dad comes and he's like, "Well, things on the outside, like our skin color, hair texture, our noses, mouths, and eye color, make us who we are. And many people call this race." And so instead of the black father and son, I replaced it with a German kid and Hitler. And I said, "Hey, isn't it funny that you can replace those exact words with, supposedly the worst person?" And I agree. You don't want that person saying these words. And I'm like, wait a second. Maybe we need to examine what we're saying anyway. So the joke was, hey, punchline Hitler. And so on Instagram, you can't even upload a drawing of him. When it's saying Hitler bad, that's the punchline. I can't even upload that comic.
Wow.
And then they were, I'm convinced someone was going through my archives and was looking for something to report. And so the other thing that got reported was a strip where it was a car that ran over a whole bunch of people last month, 2 months ago.
Yeah, was that in the Waukesha?
Right, Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
And the whole thing in their news was they were saying that the car did it, not a person.
Right, right.
And so a reporter was reading the news and he's like, don't make me say it. I don't want to say it, like the name of the person. So instead he put a gun in his mouth. And that was the punchline. And Instagram cannot allow images of people inflicting self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I was reported for that. And my revenge for that was, well, I don't want to talk too much about it. My revenge for the self-harm was, okay, well, here's a person who cut off their tits, became a man, and took off a chunk of their thigh and turned it into a giant cock. Trans person.
Yeah,
and if
I
you've
know.
seen the surgery, it is, in my opinion, self-harm. It's horrifying. And, but that's okay. I didn't get reported for that one. So that's not self-harm. But a cartoon guy putting a gun in his mouth is self-harm. So Instagram, I'm sure my time is limited on Instagram. But
wow.
The thing that pisses me off is the obvious double standard, but who's going to complain about that? No one's going to feel sorry for me about that one. But two is it's a comic. It's a drawing. And I guess that counts as an image, a depiction of something that it's dangerous. So anyway, yeah, those were the two comics that almost got me busted. I'm sure it's going to happen one of these days.
Yeah, you wonder, just what constitutes self-harm. I had a previous guest, a journalist and writer, Steve Salerno, on, and Steve is currently in Twitter jail because, according to Steve, there was a natural disaster hit Tonga, and he was trying to, I guess, raise awareness and give money to help the people of Tonga. And I guess, would it be a Tonganese woman on Twitter took umbrage with Steve being white or Italian. I guess they're all white, So, and said that accused them of having a white savior complex or something like that. And then Steve basically told her the equivalent of go jump in a lake. He said, "Why don't you go jump in a volcano?" And
that's funny.
And apparently
that's brutal.
Yeah, go jump in a volcano. And apparently, Twitter deemed that instigating, or depicting or telling someone, to
commit not life.
To commit self-harm. So he's in Twitter jail, and he refuses to
delete it.
He refuses to delete it. It's silly. It's an idiom, a turn of phrase. It's a nicer way to say, I think, to say go fuck yourself. Go jump in
eggs.
Go up your nose with a rubber hose. It's telling someone to go jump in a volcano. And the question I had for him is does this woman live near a volcano? Is this even a possibility? But it's sort of, you get into these silly situations where suddenly you're having a discussion about whether or not a 4-panel comic is promoting self-harm.
Yeah, but you see, I have no choice, and I'm sure many people in our related disciplines would agree. We have to get extra clever now to hide the humor so that our people can see the humor, but it also bypasses immediate scrutiny. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you've got to kind of, I don't know, if I have to draw, there was some thing about people with a uterus. Folks with a vulva instead of saying woman. Right. And so it's okay, I'll just draw a vulva walking around talking about hey, we're not just sexual objects or something like that.
Right.
I was okay, well, I can draw that, but then it's do I draw a giant dick walking around? And I want to draw that. It would be very funny. I actually drew a strip. The one time I censored myself last year was I had tits versus dicks in like a war, and the dicks like hit the boobs so hard that they flew into space. And then I was like, oh, this is going to be the most inappropriate thing ever. It's going to be so funny. There's all kinds of like different sized dicks, and they're all fighting and dying in each other's arms, and it's hilarious. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get away with this. There's no way. So I stopped in the middle of it, and I feel bad about that.
You know, I think you might have your, I don't know if there's the NFT of, you know, these dicks battling giant boobs.
Oh, it was so fun. And then there's a mothership that's a giant vagina, and it would have been amazing. But like,
you were very, I gotta say, very on the nose, right there. Not subtle whatsoever. There, do you know
it's
Philip?
Great.
Do you know Philip Roth, the novelist? He's no longer with us, but
No.
one of the books that he has, a very slim book. It's called The Breast, and and it's I believe it's like a man wakes up to find that he's been turned into a breast. It's sort of like a Kafka thing, except instead of a vermin or a roach or beetle,
Okay.
whatever, he's been turned into a breast. I read it. I don't remember it, but I do remember that aspect of it.
Sounds awesome.
Can you tell us about
Breasts,
can you tell us about what do they feel like?
like bags of sand.
Yeah, 40-year-old version reference right there. I'm turning 40 in February. I think probably around the time this episode comes out, I will either be turning 40 or I will already be 40. And I got to tell you, I got to be honest, I've touched some boobies in my day.
What?
Yeah, I can tell you what they feel like.
But we're always eternal incels.
Oh, right. No, it was amazing. There was one time on Twitter where I guess I got into a little Twitter spat, and the person called me an incel, and I had to explain to him, like, well, I'm like, you know, that term would work if I wasn't married with children, but for these people, like they're such dum-dums where they think that just any insult will work, even if you're not even using it correctly.
I love it. I want to do one where you see, it's the classic person who says that. I imagine, you know, the classic pink-haired, you know, piercings and everything, runs up to a toddler and calls them an incel. I want to do something with that, but I can't figure out how to calculate. I'm sure. I love being called that and stuff.
Yeah, we'll figure it out off the air. It turns out I think I'm sure the person blocked me, but you know, if you guys want to scroll back, you might be able to find the conversation, because it was a mixture of the incel stuff and then saying that I have a small cock, and it's like, we never dated, so how would you even be able to tell? And it was all this like physical stuff, like an attempt to do like, you know, like put me down, you know, on my physical appearance and all that. And what was funny is when you look at the person's bio, she referenced the fact that she had a artificial vagina, meaning that she had transitioned. Okay. And I found it quite ironic that somebody who obviously had, you know, dysmorphia was fucking coming at me.
A negative sized penis.
Yeah, it was like coming at me about my physical appearance. It's like, you know, look, I wish my fucking hairline wasn't where it is now, and I wish I had the abs that I had fucking 10 years ago, but I don't hate my body. I don't feel like my body doesn't belong to me, you know. So I thought that was cute on their part.
Online insults, you always can tell what they are insecure about, because that's usually what they come at you with.
Right.
But then our challenge in the comedy realm, I wouldn't call myself a comedian exactly, but
I think you do it very well.
Well, I'm not like super quick-witted, put it that way. So when you talk about improv, like I wish I could do that, because that would be so fun. But then I'm sure you guys, I've talked to people who were doing improv. There's the yes and principle, right? So if someone starts saying things about my body, it's like, okay, how can I yes and them right now?
Right.
So that's, I try not to argue with people, but like, how can I make this so much worse? Even if I am the butt of the joke, I'm always trying to think of, but I see I'm not super quick witted. So especially like on my feet, that's if I could have one magic skill, that's what I would want, is to be able to think of the right retort immediately.
I have amazing comebacks 2 weeks after.
Yeah,
Like
that's how
I
it
know
always
exactly
happens.
I mean, there's still like 8-year-old kids from my past that I got just some great comebacks ready for them, man. Or like stuff my dad said to me like 10 years ago. Like I could come back and I could really nail him on that.
See, if we invent a time machine, that's what we're doing. We don't care about world peace.
Oh God, how lame. We're so lame. Or you know, we go back in time and we take care of Hitler, stop all that, so then you could include him in a strip on Instagram and not worry
Right,
about
right.
it being taken down.
Or, you know, I want your mustache, dude. But I've got a picture of my grandpa with that mustache.
Oh shit!
When I
Yeah.
was growing up, I saw that. I'm like, wait, what's that? Is that? And you can't do that. It's like, dude, you know, you've ruined fashion for many years because of, you know, a few big mistakes. But
Well,
we could
it's
talk about that.
yeah. Well, it's what's interesting with the Hitler thing is like everybody's all about the mustache. Like, oh, you know what? You can't do the Hitler mustache. But then you have all these chicks walking around with like Hitler bangs. Like that's okay to have the same exact haircut as Hitler. But when it comes to his facial hair, no, you're screwed. You can't have a little, you know, little piece of stash on.
What a damn shame.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about. So you we're talking about using like your current events strips as a way to sell your more serious books. What are some of the books that you have? Like, how many of you have you got?
Well, issues wise, let's see. I'm looking at my shelf. My shitpost books, which are my 4-panel strips, are up to issue 5, but I've been super behind schedule, so it should be issue 8 right now.
Wow. Okay.
And they're about 30 something pages each. I've got a series called Mary Sue, which is up to issue 5. A series called Bad Dreams, which is only issue 2 right now. And I've had a few books, older books throughout the years. I had one called Paris that won an International Manga Award, and that was back in 2014, where I thought, you know, oh, I can get back into manga as a profession, but Japanese comics, for anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah, I was embarrassed to ask.
I'm sorry.
Is that the one
yeah.
with the octopuses having their way with ladies?
Well, that's the problem. Is there's a lot of stigma, and no, I don't draw that stuff. Yeah,
you just draw dicks and breasts in space.
I want to. You see, and I get paid for it. I get paid real good. But the problem is that kind of limits your options in the future. Like I draw children's books too, so it's like, oh, hey Billy, here's a book about the ABCs of morality, or dicks batting tits into space.
You need I guess you need a pen name.
Oh my God. No, I know. I've thought about this for a long time, but I'm so sorry. I don't want to use a pen name because I like being out in the open where people can make their mind up about me and realize, like, I as an artist or whatever, I don't know who I am. And I draw because I want to see the kind of things that come out of my head so I can get to know myself better. Put it that. That's one way to put it.
That's a great way to put it.
And really, I could judge myself and say that some of this stuff is fucked up. But unless I draw it, I won't know that it's there, and I won't know myself. And I don't think it's embarrassing for people to see things that I'm not proud of, say 10 years later, and they'd be like, oh, I can't believe you wrote a story about that. And it's like, yeah, well, that was me then. And that's just the way it is. But art is truth. We talked about that.
And also, I think when it comes to knowing yourself too, art is artifice too. It's I think you could see some things in artists where it's like, ooh, there's something hiding there that they might not be ready to get to. And I think go ahead.
Well, that's where you get the phrase of persona, wearing a mask. It's what is the mask of and what is the mask hiding? And when you're watching a performance, you see all that right in front of you. It's like a crazy amount of data that it's like a movie where you keep watching it and you keep seeing new things. Even a performance, you can see in the person's face, maybe they're hiding something that they don't know is there either.
Yeah.
But it's all part of the human thing. And that's why I love art in general, is because you can see psychologically things that you can't hide when you're out in the open. When I publish a book and I see things that I'm just like, wow, that's a really horrifying image of X, Y, and Z. It could be just, maybe that there's a monster that used to haunt me when I was a kid, and now I've drawn it.
Yeah.
Or,
Dealing with the dark, both inside and outside.
Sure.
I think is real cool. And I think you said something too that I think is admirable. The idea of being willing to be out there and put yourself out there. And I've described it sort of that I'm in a fortunate position where everything in my life is material. So like the best stuff that happens to me and the worst stuff that happens to me at my best, me at my worst, me at my ugliest, it's all material. And I'm fortunate in that I'm able to confront it, work with it, tell it. Where like I know so many shitty people who are in lines of work or they happen to be in their bubble or their neighborhood or their social setting where they have to hide who they are. And it's like, ooh, that's got to be a painful thing to do.
Out of fear of perhaps being judged, or maybe their livelihood will get ruined.
I'm talking more of just shitty people. Like, because I definitely feel for people who are good people, but they happen to just, I guess, believe the quote unquote wrong thing on a couple of subjects, and they have to keep quiet because they don't want shit to happen to them.
Yeah, you got to have a thick skin. The more that you put stuff out there, and it's scary at first to be judged, but
well, something I noticed on your IGs, your Avi, your thumbnail is that a still from Kurosawa?
Yeah, Seven Samurai.
Seven Samurai. What's I saw it years ago. Obviously, considered one of the greatest films ever made. How does that resonate with you? Does that and manga come together somehow?
Well, I'm a huge Japan fan in general, so but Kurosawa specifically, that film, that character is the leader of the band of the Seven Samurai, and the joke that I say is I'm a wandering cartoonist with no master. So historically, back in that period,
a Ronin.
Yeah, the idea of a Ronin was that you used to serve a master, but he died. And it was considered super dishonorable to survive after that. You would have had to commit seppuku. But a lot of them didn't. So now you're just a wandering swordsman who you don't serve anybody except your stomach, pretty much. And this film, Seven Samurai, takes this position of it's kind of a dishonorable thing to be a Ronin to begin with. But then they're searching. This character's looking for just like food, basically, a ball of rice or something. But the first time we meet him, he saves a kid in a hostage situation, puts his life on the line, whatever, kills a madman who tries to kidnap a kid. And all he gets is like rice or something. And then he just leaves town. And the film is about a bunch of samurai helping out a bunch of farmers from bandits who are planning to raid their village. And all the samurai get in exchange is food, like a few meals. And it's like it's a great movie, beautiful movie. I could watch it a million times, but I love that character specifically because at the end of the movie, they say something like, well, we've survived again, in a sad way. Like, all our friends are dead, but we've survived. So I guess we're just going to wander off to the next village now and find another place for us to use our skills. And wow. I identify with that just because as a cartoonist, A, I love Japan. But B, there's the idea of I've always wanted to just make comics to make people happy. And every time I try to get a job throughout my career, something goes wrong. I lose the contract, or they go out of business, or something happens where I just can't make my books that I want to make. And then I see other people like me getting jobs, and I'm just like, what the hell's wrong with me that no one wants to work with me? I don't know what's going wrong. So anyway, I feel a bit like a Ronin right now. So that's why I have that image there, and it's a great movie. There's a bunch of different reasons, but
Yeah. Well, George, I want to thank you for coming into my village and helping to save us. I don't have rice on me, but we're both Jersey boys, so maybe one of these days I can get you a nice bowl of rice to thank you for.
I'd love that. Or coffee's fine too.
Yeah, let's do the coffee. I think that's a little less weird than me showing up with like rice.
Some sushi.
Yeah. So George Alexopoulos, you can check out his artwork, his panels over at G Prime 85 on Instagram, and they could also support your work on Patreon. Is that right?
Yes, sir. It's Patreon/Studio NJ is in New Jersey.
Thank you so much for listening. And again, please order my book, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy. Just follow the link in the description or head over to Amazon and search for Lou Perez, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. And please subscribe to my podcast. Leave a 5-star review. Why not? Sign up for my newsletter at thelouperez.com. And if you want other ways to support my work, you can join thelouperez.locals.com. And of course, be sure to support my sponsors, PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Use promo code Lou for 25% off purchases over $75, and Black Organic Cold Brew, BLVCKBREW.com. Use promo code Lou for free shipping. Thank you.